So for those of you that are on the call with us today, thank you for joining the Job and Work Readiness Grant Pre-Application Conference for May 1st, 2025. Just to note that this is being recorded and will be posted on the agency website following this presentation. Next slide, please. So on the screen, you can see our youth grant staff that will be helping support today's presentation. Within that, in interest of time, we're not going to necessarily introduce until those that are presenting, they'll introduce themselves when they come on to present. But I would like to just show my appreciation to Brian Detman, our director, who's joining us today on the call, and introduce myself. I'm Paul Sell, Associate Director here at Youth Development Oregon. Next slide, please. As many of you know, as part of the RFA process, we have a single point of contact, or what we call our SPC. So I'd like to ask Bethany Moreland to join and introduce herself.
Bethany Moreland. I am the procurement officer assigned to this RFA. I just want to remind you that if you have any questions during the Q&A period that you email those to me, please do not call me. I cannot accept questions over the phone. So just a reminder that you need to email me those questions following the format that's in the RFA. I also just want to remind you that the statements and responses to questions addressed during the presentation are considered non-binding until published in the official Q&A question and answer document as part of this RFA. Please refer to the published RFA and any addendum for official RFA information. And the RFA documents are available on YDD's website, which is linked here.
All right, thank you, Bethany. So this slide is just a quick session overview. I'll be covering a little bit of housekeeping as well as the agency and grant overview to help give context of why we're here today. Sally will be joining us to talk about the Job and Work Readiness RFA Scope. And then the team will also be covering the Job and Work Readiness application and evaluation process. And then towards the end of this presentation, Abe will be joining us to talk about how to apply within our SM Apply online application system, and Sally will close us out with a recap of the RFA timeline. All right, next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started today. Just as a reminder, if all participants can please make sure that you stay on mute throughout this presentation, it would be very helpful. And also that if you have questions or comments, if you utilize the chat on your screen, will be very helpful so that we can monitor them behind the scenes and work to address them throughout this presentation. So a note on that, many of the questions we'll try to address during the presentation through chat that'll come off of my chat message to everybody. So Paul Sell, so be watching for when that comes through, that we will post both the question and the answer that we're addressing in the chat. Also to note that some of these questions may require follow-up on our part, and so they will officially be answered, well, all questions will be officially answered in the question answer document, but some of them we will note that we will need to follow up and address in the question answer document. Also, just as a reminder, as Bethany said, statements and responses to these questions addressed during the presentation are considered non-binding and will be published in the official question answer document as part of this RFA. In the RFA schedule, that is planned to be published and posted on or around Thursday, May 29th, 2025. Next slide, please. So as we begin this pre-application conference for Job and Work Readiness, we wanted just to draw everybody's attention to the mission and vision of YDO, and just so take some time to read that when you're working on your application, and just to remind that our agency really focuses and serves youth ages 6 through 24 with support for educational and career success, disruption of youth crime and violence, and an affirm youth strength and safety. Next slide, please. So to meet our vision, or to work towards meeting our mission and vision, we have our youth grants portfolio. So the Job and Work Readiness Grant is one of the RFAs that will be being launched this spring. Included in our portfolio as well are our re-engagement opportunity grants, which is currently open. Those re-engagement opportunity grants look to serve ages 14 through 24 with a direct focus on youth reconnection to education. Another upcoming RFA that will be happening, our release of RFA won't be happening in the next couple of weeks, is our community investment grants. And those grants primarily serve ages 6 through 19 and focus on positive youth development programming. If you are or have been part of YDO, you may have seen another grant called Youth Violence and Gang Prevention. The new name is Youth Violence and Gang Reduction Grant, and that primarily serves ages 16 through 24 with specifically designed youth violence and gang reduction programming. That is not something that we opened this spring. More information will come out about that one in fall of 2025. Next slide, please. So today's work is, and pre-application conference again, is focused on our job and work readiness grant. These goals are very specific to support youth development and skill building for work readiness and success in their living wage careers. The idea of this grant is going to reduce youth today disconnection from school and work through specific essential employability skills training, as well as paid work experiences and or industry recognized credentials that youth may receive as part of these grants. Another goal of that grant is to really encourage that multi-sector collaboration with re-engagement opportunity grantees, which we'll talk a little bit more about in some future slides. Next slide, please. So when we look at the specific purpose of the job and work readiness grants, it is to fund job and work readiness programming and serve youth ages 16 through 24 who are out of school, unemployed, underemployed, re-engaged, and or have a demonstrated barriers to education and workforce access. The primary age range for these funds are focused on ages 16 through 24. And the reason we're saying primary age range is that's where you're going to need to focus your application should you choose to apply for these grants. Through working with your grant manager, there may be some adjustment in terms of the 14 and 15 years old, but it would have to be something you would work directly, if awarded, with your grant manager to do it. So again, the primary age range is really where you need to focus your job application, or your grant application for, so that evaluators review for that primary age range. Next slide, please. So new this biennium is we have implemented what we call youth grants application limits. And you can see highlighted on blue on the screen is that any applicant can submit one application in the job and work readiness RFA. You can also see the other two anticipated RFA applications you can apply for. And so an applicant can apply for one application in job and work readiness, but they can also then apply in our other RFAs as indicated on the screen. Just a reminder to our applicants is that each application must provide one program in one location or different programs in one location, or the same programming for youth in different geographic service areas. What that means is essentially if you have a combination of our grants, they cannot be used for braided funding for the same program and service for youth in the same service area. Next slide, please. Also new this biennium is what we are calling the Youth Grants Awards Limits. And you can notice there's a lot of information on this screen, but really essentially a couple keynotes, and as I break this down, is that you'll notice the bolded words operational project and individual level participant data. Both of those are capitalized in the middle of the sentence, which would indicate that those are a defined term in the RFA. But for the kind of simplicity of defining that for this slide, an operational project, if you have an operational project, think about if a YDO staff member was to visit your program at time of application, we would see it serving youth in the context of which you're applying for these funds. Individual level participant data will be discussed a little bit further in this presentation, but it is the information that you would gain and report back to the agency through conversations with the participants you are serving through these funds. If you are an applicant that has an operational program, operational project, and can provide that individual level participant data, you can apply for up to $200,000 per application and or award. If you are a returning grantee, which is listed in attachment I of this RFA, you can apply for up to $300,000 in this RFA. If you are a grantee for other RFAs that you've participated with us in, but not in the job and work readiness, then you would be limited to that $200,000 limit. So some clarification specific to the job and work readiness grant is that you are considered a returning grantee if you have received future Ready funding in the previous two bienniums, or the Community Investment Workforce Readiness Grant in the previous two bienniums. Again, you can see that note down on the bottom that says the RFA section and the attachment that indicates that more in detail. So whether you're new to YDO or a returning grantee, if you are starting new programming, so you're creating it in a new service area, or you just have an idea that you want to implement in your community, that would be a limitation of $150,000 per award. Also new this biennium is that each applicant is limited to a total of $600,000 in total awards across community investments, re-engagement opportunity, and job and work readiness grants. Next slide, please. All right, Sally, I covered a lot of information, but I'm going to check out chat to see if we can address any questions and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. I am Sally Deck, and I am a grant manager here at YDO, and I'm going to walk through the RFA scope and help folks have kind of a grasp of this information. Also want to remind everyone that all of these details are in the RFA. We encourage you to read them in detail and do some sense making both with the RFA and then also with this video that will be recorded and available for you to view later. Also available for you to view maybe with a coworker who needs to have some of this information. So next slide. A couple pieces on applicant eligibility. For an applicant to be eligible, the applicant or organization needs to serve youth who are living in Oregon, and the applicant must provide essential employability skills training and also provide either paid work experiences or industry recognized credentials. And those can be provided directly or in partnership or collaboration with other organizations. So you'll see on the right the list of eligible entities. And if you have questions about that, don't hesitate to ask. And again, this will be available for review later. Next slide. So the scope of activities that I'm going to go through start with our general ideas around what YDO does with our grants, that they all are aimed for positive youth development. And there are some key pieces, specifically defined terms, youth furthest from opportunity, and that is the youth who these grants are intended to serve, and then essential employability skills training, again, required of all grantees, and then paid work experiences and how that can differ from the industry recognized credentials. And then this other piece, access to educational services, and then also reporting requirements. Next slide. So the youth furthest from opportunity, what we're really looking at is Oregon's protected classes, as well as, and you see this huge list here. And so again, this will be available for you to review later, and this is in the RFA, but calling out that we recognize that youth who are in rural or frontier communities have unique needs and specific barriers and challenges, as well as youth navigating housing instability or the foster care system. And then at the end, you'll see that we specifically call out that when we are saying that we want these grants to serve youth furthest from opportunity, we're including youth who are either at risk of not completing high school or youth who are enrolled in a school reconnection, or sometimes we call that re-engagement program, as well as youth who may have completed high school or the equivalent, but had some pretty serious supports in place, such as a 504 or an IEP, or they completed maybe without those supports and had irregular attendance. And the reason we have that in there is that we recognize youth who have challenges completing high school are likely to also have challenges as they enter the workforce. And we want to be sure that our grants are targeting the youth who most benefit from these additional supports because they are furthest from opportunity. Next slide. So essential employability skills, again, I apologize for how much text is on this slide. We want to ensure that folks who review this later have access to all of these details that we're touching on. When we talk about essential employability skills training, we're recognizing that the demographic of youth that your organization serves has unique needs, they have great qualities, and they also have specific help that they would benefit from receiving as they enter the workforce. So that can include communication skills, teamwork, time management, talking about dependability and integrity. And some folks would refer to those as soft skills. Others actually call them durable skills because we know that these are skills that when youth have these elements, they are able to have success in many, many jobs. There are also some skills that might be specific to the industry that you are helping them enter or in a specific community. That can include managing interpersonal relationships, industry-specific skills, and that in all instances, it is our intention that the essential employability skills training are delivered in a developmentally appropriate manner that are responsive to the needs of the youth that you serve, just in general, and where they are headed. And so again, that's where we're looking at what are the needs that the youth have to be successful in the careers of their choosing, and that is something you'll have the opportunity to put in the application and share with evaluators to indicate how the essential employability skills training that you offer doesn't have to be a specific curriculum, but that you'll detail what skills are included and how that is beneficial for the youth that you are serving. Next slide. Paid work experiences. So just to reiterate, every single grantee must provide essential employability skills training. Some grantees will provide paid work experiences and some will provide industry recognized credentials. So the paid work experiences are not required if you're providing the credentialing. If you're providing paid work experiences, it needs to be wage-based employment that would be subject to youth employment laws, and that's actually all employment laws. So obviously there are restrictions on younger youth who wouldn't be included in this grant anyway. So we're looking at employment laws. If a youth is working for wages, that there are regulations and laws that protect those youth. And so part of the paid work experiences is ensuring that youth recognize and understand employment laws that are designed to protect them. It's also required that the paid work experiences have really purposeful training so that youth are developing not just employment readiness skills, and that can be practice getting to work on time, following instructions, but also that there is specific training so that they are able later to move into a different job that would be more aligned with what they hope to do and or offer them greater career advancement and or higher wages so that they are then moving toward that the living wage career job of their choosing. Next slide. Industry recognized credentials, we have some really key pieces about that. So what we are looking for are certifications or credentials that are earned via specialized and specific training and worksite experience. The credential needs to be something that is accepted by a workplace or a profession or an industry as proof that the youth has the appropriate skills to be employed, and most specifically, that the credentials qualify the youth to have jobs in living wage careers. So this is where we're looking for credentialing or certification in maybe healthcare fields or construction fields, things like heavy equipment operating or welding, those sorts of credentials. If the only credentialing that's offered is like CPR training, that would not be sufficient. If the only credentialing is a food handler's license, that would also not be sufficient to qualify as an industry recognized credential. And again, we'll have an opportunity to clarify things if folks have specific questions. And there are many more details in the actual RFA, and you'll note at the bottom, this is RFA section 2.2. Next slide. So access to educational services, this is not something that was called out either in Future Ready grants nor in the community investment workforce grants. And so I just want to draw your attention to this, that youth who are engaged in the job and work readiness grant programming must have access to educational services. So an example would be a youth is maybe deep into, let's just say, a welding certificate or credential of some sort, and they decide halfway through that isn't what they want to do. And so there needs to be an opportunity for them to have access to other educational services. What that might mean is that it's access to a GED completion program. It might mean access to community college. It can be any variety that is appropriate for the youth who you are serving. So when we say educational services, we're specifically calling out regular, structured academic instruction and or curriculum, and that it leads to a diploma or a degree or a credential. And so that can be high school completion, that can be specifically degree track or credential track, post-secondary coursework. It can't include something like just a self-study GED preparation. It can't include just an elective course that's taken at a community college. So what we were really aiming for is that youth have access to educational services while they are completing the job and work readiness training that is part of this grant. Next slide. Reporting requirements will look familiar to returning grantees, the quarterly narrative report, an expenditure report each quarter, data each quarter, and then also an annual data report. The individual level data needs to include intake and exit information that you'll need to speak directly with the youth in order to get all of the elements that the data report requires. And this is also something that at project plan, after the grant is awarded, that we would go into greater detail so that we're sure that you and we understand what data will be collected from the youth you are serving. Next slide. Individual level participant data for this grant includes, among other things, youth identifiers, their first and last name, their date of birth, also their gender and their race or ethnicity. There are some other elements around the programming that we will also ask about, but these are the big key pieces. Next slide. I'll talk a little bit about the actual application and evaluation. And this is, again, high level, and then we'll have an opportunity to chat a little bit more about what SM Apply looks like. Next slide. So within the RFA, and then when you begin the application, you'll see these questions that are required questions that you must answer, but that are not scored. So title, executive summary, the organization description, and the description of your community, so who will be served by this grant, as well as the budget, and then line items within your budget and a description of your budget. So those are unscored items that are required as part of the application. And then also these letters of partnership that we'll talk about in greater detail in just a moment. You'll see that there are different word limits for different pieces of this. That's just to give you an idea of about how much you need to tell us. So an organization description could be very, very lengthy, and we don't need that much detail. We're looking for maximum 300 words. Next slide. So the letters of partnership. This is something that we're really excited about, and so we are hopeful that this will feel collaborative and an opportunity for you to be deeply braided with your community partners who are also serving the same youth or who are serving similar youth in similar ways. So every application is required to submit a minimum of 2, a maximum of 4 letters of partnership. Those letters will be submitted through the SM Apply portal. There are specific letters that are sometimes required, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And remember that a letter can be used to fulfill more than one specific letter requirement. I'll get to that in a moment. So things to remember. When you are in the application in SM Apply, you will type in information about who is going to write your letter. And that is information that is then seen by evaluators and YDO staff. And the folks who are going to be writing the letters for you, you need to be in conversation with them, let them know what your application includes, how you see them as a partner, what the elements of the partnership would look like, and let them know all of that information, because from within SM Apply, you will push the letter request. The letter writer will receive that request, and then when they submit it, it will actually go back into SM Apply and become part of your application. The important piece for you to know is that the person writing your letter won't have access to your application. So you'll need to tell them where they fit in as a partner to your program. So this is where that last bullet, you'll need to define for them what service area you are intending your proposed project to be within and how that matters to the letter writer, as well as the details around the proposed project. That can be a site location, et cetera, and that they then understand what your project is prior to them receiving the request through SMA for them to write that letter of partnership. Next slide. So a letter of partnership is required for someone, a partner who is providing a site for you. So if your programming relies on a specific site that is managed by someone else, you must submit a letter that clearly states that agreement is active and that there is an intention for that to be active through the grant period. Similarly, if you have a subcontract or a subaward of $25,000 or more, then you must have a letter of partnership from that partner describing the contracted services. And this is one of those spaces where it could be the same partner and one letter could meet both those requirements. So if you are subcontracting $25,000 or more in order to use a site by a partner, that partner would then detail, yes, we have this contract. It is through the duration of the grant period, and it includes use of this site. Next slide. So as I said earlier, essential employability skills training are a required piece of this grant. It is not required that the applicant is the one who provides that training. So if you have a partner who is providing that training for you, then that partner would submit a letter on your behalf explaining that they are the ones providing the essential employability skills training. Likewise, you might have a partner for the paid work experiences or the industry recognized credentials, and that partner would then be the one who would need to submit that letter indicating that they're providing those services. Likewise, for that access to educational services, if you as an applicant don't provide educational services, as defined in the previous slide, you'll need to submit a letter from a provider with whom you'll partner. And so that can mean that you submit a letter from perhaps a high school if you work with younger youth, or perhaps a community college if you work with youth who have already completed their high school diploma or equivalent, but that there needs to be some evidence through these letters of partnership that you are providing access to educational services either directly or through partnership. If you provide all of the required services, if you as an organization provide educational services and either paid work or the industry recognized credential and the essential employability skills training, then the requirement for the letters, again, this is a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4 letters, would be letters from community partners of your choosing, demonstrating that you are engaged in the community and that you do collaborative work and that you are a partner to other organizations who either serve the same youth in the same ways or serve the same youth in other ways, and that you are engaging very intentionally in collaborative work. Mostly this is because we recognize that you all already do this, that we have not seen any of you folks existing in a silo, and we know that the youth don't either. And that for there to be greater collaboration between our grantees increases the services, both quality and quantity of services that youth have access to and are able to make good use of. Next slide. I'm going to pass this one to Jared. Jared, you get the budget.
Thank you, Sally. And I'll just check in with Paul. Do we need to pause at all first for anything, or are we good to go?
Thank you, Jared. No, we are doing fine. I think most questions are being addressed in the chat.
Excellent. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jared Shaw. I'm a grant manager here at YDO. And over the next few slides, I'll just be talking briefly about the budget and the evaluation items. So what you see here is essentially the template for the budget categories. So as part of your application, you will need to submit a budget. Now this is unscored, but this is information for us so that if your application is awarded, your grant manager will know what you're intending to use the funds for. So as you go into SurveyMonkey Apply, you'll come to a budget task, and it will ask you simply to input the amounts that you are anticipating to spend in each of these categories. Now, if you see in the bottom right here, attachment D is the attachment to reference for these budget categories. So that attachment is going to discuss in greater detail what can be included in each of these categories. A couple important things to note here also. RFA section 3.2.6 dives into this in further detail, so please review that section because there are some requirements as part of this budget. So you see here in the top right, any subcontracts or subawards that exceed $10,000 over the duration of the grant, so that's over the 2-year period, must be listed. And there will be a text box in SurveyMonkey Apply when you input your budget that will ask about any subcontracts or subawards over $10,000. So those will need to be listed. As Sally just mentioned, subcontracts or subawards also over $25,000 or more will need to have a letter of partnership. So those will also need to be listed and then provided a letter of partnership. The administrative or indirect costs will be maximum 15% of the total budget or your federally approved indirect rate, whichever is greater. All right, next slide, please. Evaluation items. So this really is just a chart that shows it's just general overview of the evaluation items, the word limit, and the points. So these are the items for which your application will be scored. These are the items that evaluators will see, and they will score your answers to these questions. Again, RFA Section 4 and Attachment C dives into this in further detail. And this, if you see in the left column here, that section number is the section of the RFA that corresponds to that question. Essentially, there will be 5 evaluation questions here. One is on your project implementation capacity. So what is your capacity within your community to implement that project? You see the word limit and the number of points assigned to these. 2 will be your project youth population in the service area. So who are the youth that you intend to serve? Number 3, project services and activities, essentially describing what your services are. Number 4 will be project equity and access. So that will just ask you to describe how you are ensuring that all youth will have equitable access to your project. And then number 5 will be community partnerships and support. So again, elaborating on those partnerships and the support that you have within that community to do the work. Next slide, please. So when you answer these evaluation items, again, please refer to the RFA. You'll see a number of sub-items within each evaluation item. Please make sure that you answer all of those sub-items, those sub-bullets, in order to get the most points possible. Please clearly describe what you will do and the youth to be served. Again, answer all of those items, and please do demonstrate a firm commitment to what you will undertake if awarded the grant. Next slide, please. And I think I'm passing it now to Bill.
Good morning. My name is Bill Hansel. I am data lead and grant manager with YDO. I'm going to talk about scoring and assignments of those scores, and then ranking of those scores. The first thing that will be done is a regional assignment of your application, and the region is based on your established business address. If you have a different business address than where you will be serving youth, as so that say headquarters is different than the main site serving youth, you have the option to change region if that site is outside of a region that your business address is in. This will be done in SMA as part of your application, and the map here in the corner shows the 11 regions of the state. So you must complete a request to change region as part of the SMA application. And this again would be if your primary site where the majority of your youth are served is in a different region than your business address, that's where it would be appropriate to apply for a change of region. Next slide, please. This is important because the first step of awarding applications of the 2-step process is by a regional ranking. All applicants will be divided into the 11 regions that they have, and a score will be assigned to each of those applications, and the highest ranking score within a region will be the regional award winner. In step 2, priority points are assigned, and the regions are done away with, so it becomes now a statewide ranking. All applications are now competing against each other. and that's with the priority points assigned at this stage. Next slide, please. Priority points for this biennium will be awarded to federally recognized tribal applications for step 2. These priority points will be calculated as follows. So basically, whatever your score is times 1.05 will produce a final score. Once the priority points have been assigned, ranking will then occur, and awards and intent to awards will be based on those ranks and the amount of money that is in the pot. I am done and passing it on. Paul, is there any check-in?
Thank you, Bill. Oops, sorry, I didn't turn on my video. So we are addressing the questions via chat. We are going to do a little bit of research, so we are a little bit backlogged on chat. So please stay tuned as we continue to update these throughout, but none to address currently. Thank you.
All right, hello, I'm Abraham Magana. I'm a youth grant manager here and operations analyst, and I'll be going into the application process or how to apply for the Job and Work Readiness Grant. Next slide. So similar to previous biennium, we've used the SM Apply portal, I'm sorry, or sometimes we refer to it just as SMA, or you've also heard us refer to it as SurveyMonkey Apply. It's all the same thing, but it's on that website you see there. And also some of the questions, we've developed kind of a Q&A page as well. If you do have some challenges in navigating or using SMA or issues with the account or something not working the way you thought it worked, if you look at the link there on our website, you can access that as well. Next slide. So how do you go about kind of starting off? This is kind of your landing page, if you will. There's two ways. Obviously, you may have applied, like I said, in the past, and can log in using your old account if you've had an account in the past. But if you're new, you will have to set up and register a new account using your email. Now, we ask that you use your specific email for your work. It's a lot easier if you do get awarded and others have to access SMA. Oftentimes, what we've seen is some community emails where there's on one single email, but 3 or 4 people are attached to it. That can be a little challenging, but I do recommend everyone have an individual account. And also, when you register, you will be asked for an organization account or an individual account. We ask that you use an individual account also. You will not be able to apply for the grant if you don't have an individual account set up. And it's basically just checking off a box once you do register. Next slide. So once you go in, you will see something similar to this box. And this box represents your specific grant. You may see more than one box when you apply. If you're applying, let's say, for re-engagement in this jobs grant, you might see 2 boxes, right? If you've been awarded previously or currently have one of our grants, you may see a box from your current grant when you apply as well, right? But you will know which ones are the new grants you're applying for because on the bottom you'll see 0 of 9 tasks completed. Basically, you haven't started anything. You have the green start button, and that's once you hit that start, then you'll go on to the next screen, which is kind of your application navigation screen across various different tasks within the grant application. Next slide. And this is what I'm talking about here and I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit what this means here in regards to the tasks. Every time each task will lead you to a little form. If you've ever used Google Forms, it's very similar to that where you have your application questions. You fill in the blanks. Once you've completed a task, a little green check mark will appear next to your task, indicating that it's been completed, right? You can pretty much go between the tasks. We do understand that at times you may have 1 or 2 people working on the grant application. And because of that, we also have this add collaborator function that you see there on the left, right? You have on top, you see, I think in little print, you see Paul Sell as an owner. The owner is the person who's the primary contact and the only person who will be able to submit the grant application. A collaborator will have access to make edits to the application, but they cannot submit the application. Right? It's very important you remember that because sometimes someone will try to submit and they can't, and you're like, well, you aren't the owner. You're not the one who actually started the grant application and or created the grant application. Another thing you'll notice here, and I think in the next slide you'll see it here also, I believe, but there's two buttons, a review and a submit button. They'll stay grayed out, uh, but once you've checked off you have little green checks next to all your tasks, meaning you've completed it, your submit button will turn green. And that means you can submit it. Now, it's very important that that submit button is clicked on. That indicates that you've actually submitted the app, not only completed it, but actually submitted the grant application, right? You will also have the option to review it once you've completed all the tasks as well. But that's something I just want to kind of remind you of. You will receive also an email confirming that you've successfully submitted the grant application. If for some reason you're not sure or a little antsy, wait, I don't see it, you can reach out to the SPC, but usually within the hour you'll reach it. Sometimes you'll get it instantly as soon as you hit submit as well. Another thing is, if you don't receive it in an hour, check your junk and or spam email as well. Next slide. Now we're going to go a little bit how you request the letters of partnership. Now, when we talk about letters of partnership, we're not talking kind of in the sense of you're going to, and I think previously, you're uploading a letter. What you're going to be doing is giving the opportunity to your partner, your partnership organization, to fill out a form online, is what it is essentially, which is kind of a template asking about what their role is as a partner, right? You'll have a button. So you see here, there's a little task, has a little checkbox, right? And the request recommendation. When you click that request recommendation, it asks you for the email, who you're emailing, and it gives you an opportunity to write, what are you asking for, right? You may have already reached out and told them, but you can add some more information there and it will be sent to them. And on the bottom, we see where it says 0 recommendations and that green button mark as complete. That's where you'll kind of get a little status is, okay, the request has been made or if it's been completed. Again, they have to be done through the SMA portal. Can you back up real quick? Let me just double check something. Yeah, I already went through all that. Okay, great. Next slide. Again, kind of like I mentioned earlier and I stressed earlier, and you see it here in the green circle, the green submit button. Make sure it's green. If it's not green, it's probably because you may have not completed one of the tasks. But again, I want to stress that green submit button because, unfortunately, we don't want to get a phone call. We finished it, but we can't submit. Well, on top of that, also, I would very much recommend not to wait till the last minute. Just a reminder, if you can avoid that at all costs, please do. The earlier you go into it, I think the better, especially if it's the first time applying, because you can familiar yourself with how to navigate within the SM Apply kind of ecosystem, if you will. Next slide. And I think, is it back to you, Paul, I believe?
Actually, it's going to go back to Sally in just a moment, but I'll jump on. And so there are lots of questions being addressed in the chat. So please do take some time to review that within it. Also noticing that there are some others, folks that are adding some definitions, which is helpful within that. And the reason I'm saying that is just to remind folks that all of these questions will be officially addressed in the published Q&A document that Sally is going to address here in just a minute on the RFA schedule. But so please use these for reference, but also remember that you do need to circle back and review the official Q&A document once it is published. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I was also just in the document and then in the chat seeing the questions, and great questions coming in. Thank you for all of those. Yeah, don't hesitate to pop a question in the chat so that we can be as clear as possible. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So this is the RFA schedule. So just for you to know the dates, as Abe said, please be sure that you have your application ready to go before the deadline, so that if there are any snafus, that you are able to then get that addressed prior to the deadline. You'll see that we have dates and times. The times are all Pacific Daylight Time, which is the right now time. And you'll see that the end of day for us is 4 p.m. and that the final deadline for applications to be completed is June 23rd at 4 p.m. Leading up to that, the last day to ask us questions, so perhaps review this slide deck with your coworkers, ensure that you have all of your questions submitted to us by 4 p.m. on May 22nd. And then we will have answers to that approximately May 29th, but that will be all of the answers will be shared out so that you have an opportunity to see the answers well in advance of the closing of the application. We're hoping to have intent to awards issued on August 21st, and then we will follow that with project plans and some opportunities to get into some nitty-gritty details that would be specific to the youth you serve once the grant has been awarded. I think that is the end of what I've got. Paul, do you have more questions? Shall we go to the final slide? Are there questions that we need to that you need to answer verbally?
Yes, thank you. We can go ahead and go to the final slide. Thank you, Sally, for capturing the RFA. We have a few questions that we are still addressing in chat, but I will try to address some of them here as we are kind of trying to wrap up. So one of the questions that came in is if, hold on, I got to take note that we made a verbal reference to this. If high school completers are eligible, can you please clarify what the requirement would be for their educational services? And Sally, I want you to maybe help clarify this if I get it wrong. But my understanding is that JWR, the Job and Work Readiness Grant, does not require that educational services are provided. It requires that there is access to youth should that need to be there. And correct?
Exactly. Yes.
All right, perfect. And so we'll take note on that in our answers within that. I'm going to read a couple more questions because I do want to honor everybody's time as we're addressing these. Thank you, Cord, for putting one of those in the chat. What is the educational requirement for youth who have their diploma or GED but don't want to go to secondary route and instead to do workforce training? Again, that applies back to that same question, is that the educational services is an access point for the job and work readiness, which is different than our other RFAs that are open within that. So please do read that closely. We will further address that in our official Q&A document within that. Thank you, Cord. He's posting that in the chat as well. We have two primary service locations where both youth are served, so two regions. So the primary service location is the location where the majority of youth are served, is how it's stated within the RFA. So you would need to identify that as part of it. And so you do need to indicate a primary service location for which region you are applying for on that. And just a reminder of that score of how the official awarding goes is the regional awards are first, and then it goes to a statewide ranking in that second step of regional awards. Again, more detail in the RFA within that. All right. Apologize, I am reading questions as they're coming in. So Abe, can you address the letter of partnerships a little bit more detail, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot? So mainly primary questions around, will the applicant be able to see what is submitted? And are they able to kind of, if they are not submitted an SM apply, are they able to connect with the person they're requesting?
So let me kind of clarify a little bit, because I saw something else in regards to how the process kind of works. So in the platform, it asks you for the partnership person's email, right? And then there's another field underneath, right? So you don't have to provide them with any links. The platform, SMA, will send them an automated email to that email that you provided, asking them that they've been requested to submit a letter. They would in their email, they would click a button, and that button would take them would open up a new web page. And that web page would be basically a form, if you will, of questions. It'll be some questions asking about partnership activities. And it's on one of the attachments. Charlie, do you recall which attachment by any chance?
Attachment H is the sample letter of
There
partnership.
we go. Attachment H, and that'll tell you what's kind of required in regards to what questions are asked in that partnership letter. You know, so that's how that works. You will know once a letter has been submitted as an applicant, and you will also know if it hasn't been submitted.
Perfect. And and correct me if I'm wrong, Abe, but I do believe that applicants will be able to see what was submitted.
Yes, the
Okay,
applicants,
perfect.
yeah, I think the
Thank you.
applicants can't see what has been submitted.
All right.
I'm not certain that they'll be able to see what has been submitted. I am very confident that they will see whether or not it's been submitted.
Okay,
Because
perfect.
the applicant can see like, yep, the letters are in there, and then the
Okay,
applicant
yeah,
is required to then
let me
like hit
clarify.
that
Yes, they
final
can see if
submit
the letter,
button.
not
Mhm.
the content is the letters.
I don't
Okay,
believe that
I'm
they'll see the
sorry.
content. Obviously, applicants can just ask their letter writer to send them a copy of what they said. So that doesn't need to be kept secret.
Yeah.
very
Um,
good. And just to circle back to that, I know that there's a little bit of discussion on our part with that one. We will officially clarify that in the Q&A, published Q&A document.
mhm.
So just a note that you want to revisit that if that was one of your specific questions of concern, and that official Q&A document is going to be posted on or around May 29th, 2025.
There are two questions that are they're in the chat that I'd love to address, and it has to do with credentialing and paid work. Paid work experiences are not required to have any associated credentialing, and credentialing is not required to have a paid work experience element, nor does an applicant have to do both of those things. So if what is appropriate for the youth you serve, if what's appropriate is that they would work in a restaurant, then the paid work experience is the restaurant work. And that in order to do that paid work, they might have to get a food handler's license, they might have to get other credentialing. And so that program, that project proposal would simply be a paid work experience that includes some minor credentialing, the food handler's license or CPR. And so then the questions that you answer within the evaluation section of the application would be all about the paid work experience. So while there is technically a credential that they earn that is required in that industry, it is not, it would be considered a paid work experience project. And that is then the evaluation questions would be aimed in that direction. What we want to recognize is that some of these projects that we have seen great success from many grantees don't have any paid work experiences at all. And they, quote unquote, only have this industry recognized credential. And we want to create space for those very big industry recognized credentials because we recognize that some youth come into a program, they go through the essential employability skills training, and then they get this credential to be a heavy equipment operator. And then once they have that credential, then they leave the programming and they're able to go get gainful employment. So the industry recognized credential is truly created as an opportunity for those projects that don't focus on paid work, but instead focus on the training that leads to that credential or certificate.
All right. Thank you, Sally, for clarifying on that, and see a few more questions around the educational services. And so again, to be clear, we will work on addressing those in clearer detail. But with the job and work readiness program, educational services do not have to be provided by or as part of this grant. It needs to be an accessible option. So you will have a letter of partnership in terms of who you would be able to refer a young person to should they need access to the educational services. So the idea is if a young person shows up that wants some sort of education, they're able to be referred to it through your organization, or some organizations may be able to provide that. But again, educational service is not a required component of it. It's about the access that is required in terms of this RFA within that. So I recognize there are a bunch of questions still coming in chat. And so where I am going to officially, we're going to go ahead and close this pre-application conference out. You can continue to submit those questions within chat and or through the single point of contact with Bethany, and they will be addressed on the official question and answer responses published on or around, May 29th, 2025. Again, I want to very much appreciate everybody's attendance to this conference. This will be posted once we get an opportunity to clean up the video and get it ready to publish. So please check back onto our website for further information to reference this discussion as well as other RFAs within that.